Now I can see you. Yeah, go ahead. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Jawad. And good morning and good afternoon to all those joining from different parts of the world. Very happy to be here despite the very challenging circumstances. And my compliments to Jawad and the entire team at the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union for organizing this session. I want to begin, first of all, with paying tribute to all the frontline workers fighting this global pandemic, the doctors, the nurses, the law enforcement, the media, especially the media who's been playing a crucial role, as we just now heard, in bringing information about this pandemic to every part of the world. We unfortunately at Doordarshan and All India Radio lost some of our staff to the pandemic, and I just wanted to pay my tributes to everyone's efforts in battling this very tough situation for all of us. My talk will briefly focus on the various efforts that the public broadcaster undertook in India during this period across both television and radio, and more importantly, digital, as we battled the pandemic on several fronts, and we continue to do so. One of the greatest challenges for us, and I'm sure across the world as well, was on creating public awareness, especially the do's and don'ts. As the pandemic unfolded, our understanding of the pandemic also changed. The precautions that were most important during the first few weeks changed to precautions that became more and more important, like wearing masks and so on. So at every stage of the pandemic, be it the lockdown, be it the opening up of economic activity, we've been constantly engaging with the people across India, both television and radio, in multiple languages, to keep them informed, keep them aware in terms of what precautions to take, to use the contact tracing app, which has been developed, which currently has about 150, close to 200 million users across India. And then making sure that people understand the nuances, the precautions, the various aspects of the situation in a language that is close to them. And I think that has been the biggest challenge of this period. And then, of course, the continuous news developments. While the entire planet took a pause and most economic activity came to a standstill, broadcasting worked hard, worked probably more than normal, more than usual, to ensure that the signals were up and running and people were continuously informed and made aware. One of the interesting aspects of this engagement during the lockdown was television viewership in India hit an all-time high. And we could see this especially when at various stages during the lockdown and subsequent unlock, when the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, addressed the people, the TV viewership was at an all-time high. In fact, even higher than what we had witnessed during what is the most popular television event, which is IPL cricket, which typically gets around 190, 200 million unique viewers. And what we witnessed was during this pandemic period, every time the Prime Minister stood up to address the nation, we were witnessing upwards of 200 million plus unique viewers. So it was a very interesting and challenging environment, and the role of mass media could not have been any more critical than in this period. One of the initiatives that our frontline reporters took was to go beyond the hospitals, go beyond the clinics, to report from the front lines in terms of how critical services were being delivered through the lockdown, be it at the ports, be it in the food supply chain, be it with law enforcement. Unfortunately, a lot of our law enforcement officers across the country who were busy enforcing the lockdown also succumbed to the COVID-19. So our staff was out there reporting and collecting the day-to-day developments and going behind the scenes to give an insight into how the entire country's economic supply chains kept running despite the lockdown. One other interesting initiative during this period, uh, a broadcasting initiative, was the Dawn Chorus. The Dawn Chorus occurs usually in April with radio broadcasters from Europe, India, and across the Asia Pacific collaborating to bring the bird songs early in the morning on radio. And what we observed was during the lockdown, there was a lot more greater interest in nature, with a lot of sightings of rare birds and animals, with the human activity coming down. So despite the lockdown, we said that we should ensure this tradition of dawn chorus continues. So we actually coordinated recordings of bird songs from across India, across the world, and kept that tradition going. The biggest challenge during the pandemic was the information epidemic that you had to, or rather disinformation epidemic that we had to battle, because there were so many rumors, so much of misinformation and wrong information about the pandemic that was being spread through social media. So one of the initiatives that the public broadcaster undertook was to work closely with all the government agencies and put out the right information in real time, in response to queries, in response to rumors, and making sure that the information epidemic that was spreading was countered effectively, and to make sure that the right information was delivered to the people. And one interesting aspect of this fake news busting was a real-time cell that was created, which worked 24/7, which kept monitoring social media, kept monitoring the digital websites to see what kinds of wrong information is circulating, and then to quickly speak to the experts and put out the right information. So this was an ongoing effort, and it continues to. Education has been a big area of focus, and in a country as diverse as India, with several languages, several states, and each having their own method of delivering education, the public broadcaster stood up to the challenge and continues to do so, with several hours of daily programming across the TV and radio stations, as well as in various languages and dialects, while also making this information available digitally. One example of how critical it is to get language specific content on COVID-19. So we have this tribal region in India where it was very important to get them the right information, because there are certain words which just didn't exist in that tribal dialect. So we had to get special translators to put out specific messages for the benefit of this tribal community. So these are some of the examples that I wanted to share in terms of how public broadcaster was combating COVID-19.
Thank you. Thank you, Shashi. Actually, I appreciate that. I also join you in expressing my sincere condolences to the families of the victim of the journalist or broadcasters, not only in Doordarshan or Prasar Bharati, but also in the entire world, actually. These are people who serve the public, and for that they lost their lives. You have said many things, and in particular, you mentioned that Doordarshan and All India Radio had the highest viewership rate, and also you touched the matter about fake news. I will come back to that later, but I want you to a little bit more talk about educational aspects of broadcasting, because you have millions of children going to school and were not able to go to school. So how Doordarshan and All India Radio reached to these children and taught them?
Great question. So in India, we are very fortunate to have created a direct-to-home television platform called DD Free Dish. It's free to air, no subscription, and it reaches into 35 million households. So on this platform, we have about 40 channels dedicated to education. So thankfully, we already had the basic infrastructure in place. So the combination of our regular TV channels and these 40 educational channels put together, about roughly 60 channels are available for educational content to be delivered. So we started with about a couple of hours a day on our channels, while the educational channels were doing it 24/7. And then we've gradually increased it now to be about 7 to 8 hours, depending on the language or the region. And every day you have educational content being delivered, all the way from the lower grades of schooling all the way up to college and university. So this is a massive operation, and it continues to do so today till whenever the situation eases and we are able to get the children back in schools.
Thank you. I can understand the massive operation. I can understand the challenges about language and reaching all corners of the country. Appreciate that. I would like to say goodbye for the moment to Shashi and